Hi, and thanks for tuning in to Wild About Wildlife. I'm your host, Kathy Mueller. At Salthaven Wildlife, of course, we rehab injured wildlife, but a key part of what we also do is we raise awareness about wildlife. So whether it's learning that we really should not be feeding the ducks, or that, yes, we can coexist with pesky rodents like beavers, we all can play a role in making sure that wildlife thrive. So I am thrilled in this episode to have the founder of Salthaven, Brian Salt, join me once again, and we talk about the different presentations that Salthaven offers, both virtually and in person. Most of them feature an appearance by one of our wildlife ambassadors, and Brian is such an engaging and entertaining storyteller. He really knows how to make a presentation come to life. So let's get it started. All right, Brian, welcome back. It's been a little bit since we've had you on, it feels like.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, so I'm looking at your website here, and so it says Salthaven Wildlife Rehabilitation and Education Center. So education is right smack in the middle of your official name, and then in the description of what your mandate is, it talks about rehabilitating, of course, wildlife, but then through education, we are dedicated to increasing public awareness about and respect for the issues affecting Canadian wildlife. So talk a little bit about that, and why is it so important to Salthaven to have education as part of your mandate?
Well, education is so important on so many different levels. You know, you could bring us an animal and we could fix them up and get them back out into the wild, but if you could get us in front of 500 people, we could probably do at least as much good there. Our education programs are going to connect people with animals and nature and teaches them that their actions can make a difference, even in their very own backyard. We focus on introducing people to the uniqueness and diversity of Ontario wildlife, and and the work that we do within the clinic, you know, with sick, injured, or orphaned animals that a lot of people don't see. We're not playing with animals. This is serious business. You know, we're dealing with zoonotics and parasitology and whatnot. But I think the real effort here in the education program is to help people understand that they are intimately connected with nature and the intelligence therein. And once they understand how they can be of help, especially, you know, when we bring in a wildlife ambassador, and it opens it up on a much different level than just watching it on a screen type of thing. So yeah, the education is really important. In the schools, you know, we have a well laid out program, and we can tailor make it to the individual schools. It coincides with the education curriculum in the schools, so it just brings it alive. It helps teachers to help the students understand just exactly what it is that they can be doing in the environment. So yeah, it really is important. It heightens, I think, imagination and enthusiasm for it as well, and that's our goal. We really believe that even young people at a very early age can be excited about the environment and helping it, rather than ignoring it or not even knowing it's out there sometimes, you know, when they're raised in the city.
Yeah, so I've been taking some notes while you've been talking there because a couple of things jumped out to me, and you talked about forming that connection and showing the connection between humans and wildlife and how we are all connected. So why is it important to have that bond, to have that understanding of that bond?
Well, you know, this is where tolerance and understanding really come to the forefront. You know, so often in the rural communities and urban communities think differently about nature. You know, the to the farmer, everything in nature is his enemy, really, except for hawks and snakes, maybe, because they eat mice and keep rodent populations under control. But in the city, it's a little bit different, the thinking. And so, you know, we need to tailor our presentations for both ways of thinking. But that tolerance and understanding are really important. And if we can start to understand how nature works independently of what we expect it to work like. I think we've come a long way in helping to understand just what the environment is all about, and especially the animals that are there in the environment.
Well, especially this day and age, right? With climate change and everything that's going on in our environment, we're seeing more wildfires. We're seeing just more natural disasters, not just here in Ontario, but around the world, right? And you talked in your first response, and it was about that one person can make a difference. It's that kind of that pebble effect in a pond, right? You throw one pebble in and you can see the impact it has on that dispersing all of that water. And the same goes for one person, because you often hear from people, right? I'm one person, I can't do anything about climate change, I can't do anything about, what kind of an impact am I going to have? But you see it differently.
Oh yeah, back a while ago this summer we were releasing some baby snapping turtles, and just in about less than 5 minutes, we picked all kinds of junk that were lining the shoreline there. There was fishing line and sinkers and floats and hooks, and I can't even count how many ducks and turtles and whatnot that we've taken fish hooks out of. But even in not even along the river, but in the city itself, all you have to do is drive on a ramp going out to the 402 or the 401, and you see all the garbage that's there in the on the side of the road. You wonder, gosh, But I think the message here is that when we understand nature better, we can do better. We know that feeding bread to wild animals is not a good thing, and it impacted crops and the damage that it does in the environment alone. There's lots of other things we can be feeding ducks and geese, like cracked corn and sunflower seeds and things of that nature, shelled, of course. But when we understand how nature works, then we can do a better job in interconnecting with nature. In the springtime, we get so many calls. We get upwards of 120 phone calls a day in the early spring with people who are finding animals, baby animals, a lot of them in the spring, and that's really it's difficult for them because they don't know how, does this animal actually need help, and that's such an important part of it all. Are we abducting this animal or are we really rescuing it? And like baby birds, for instance, they spend 5 days on the ground after they leave the nest, before they can actually fly. And all during that time, mom and dad are feeding that little guy on the ground. But oftentimes people find it and they think, well, it's got to be abandoned, right? So they bring it in, they bring it home, they try to feed it. It's often the wrong type of food, and or they give it too much or not enough, and it ends up dying, and which is a real heartbreak for them because they were just trying to help.
Yeah.
So, these are the things we talk about in our education programs as to when does an animal actually need help. Fawns, for instance, last year we had over 80 phone calls for fawns, and we got them all back with mom. So understanding how, all that works in nature is really important to our being able to help effectively, and knowing when an animal needs help. Sometimes, we had a fawn that came to us a couple of years ago, had been fed cow's milk for 5 days, and we worked with it for 3 days to try to get it back to, being able to be put back in the wild, and it ended up dying. They just can't digest the proteins in the cow's milk. And but people are kind-hearted. They find this fawn, it's in the middle of nowhere, and what mom in her right mind would leave a baby out in the middle of a field,
Right.
with no mom in sight, when in actual fact it's quite normal for them, right?
Yeah.
And they communicate. The baby's making little high frequency little sounds, meat type of thing, and mom's got this low frequency grunt, and they're communicating back and forth, and they can hear each other. Those large radar scoops they have on their ears, or their head called ears, they can hear each other a half a mile away. But kind-hearted people will find a fawn in the tall grass, and they look around. The first thing, there's no mom. It must be abandoned, right? So they bring it home, and what do babies drink? Milk. So you go to the fridge, you grab milk, you plug it into the baby. The baby's thirsty. It takes it. Thank you very much. But 12 hours later, you got a real problem on your hands. So these are the type of things that we try to educate people as to first of all, when you find an animal that seemingly needs help, does it really need help? And what are some of the signs that would say that they do? We have a saying with fawns, for instance, that we communicate with our audiences that if the ears are straight, the fawn is great. If the ears are curled, the fawn needs help in the world.
Hmm.
And the tip of the ears just start to curl back as they're becoming dehydrated. And the nose is not shiny and wet anymore. It's kind of dry and leathery looking. Those are the times that, yeah, if you give Salthaven a call, we can probably walk you through it and maybe even find mom and resolve the situation in a real way.
You were saying that you do these group events and go into the schools and that, but you're also out at, especially in the summer months, obviously, like at the different markets and fairs and this sort of thing to reach the public in a different way.
Yeah, we bring wildlife ambassadors with us on those markets and to schools as well. I think it's really neat to be able for the general public to see these animals up close and personal. We have Gaselda, the black rat snake. Kids love
Yeah,
snakes.
what kind of reaction do you get from people when they see these animals firsthand? Like what kind of reaction do you get?
Yeah, the kids want to touch them. They want to, they just want to get up close and personal with them. Adults, man, we use the snake for crowd control. It's but the kids really really like being able to feel the snake, and because they've kind of been taught from media or Hollywood that snakes are cold and slimy,
Yeah.
but when they touch it, they go, oh, wow, that's not cold and slimy at all. And then we get talking about the intelligence of snakes and what they're capable of, and how Gaselda can climb right straight up a brick wall just using the mortar cracks as leverage, um, and how they help to keep rodent populations under control. If you like mice and rats, maybe that's not such a good thing, but most people are grateful for snakes for being able to do that. We have Shakoba, the red-tailed hawk, and Shakar, the lager falcon. And we talk about their attributes and how intelligent they really are and how strong they are. They have superhuman powers. They can see things that we can't see. They can see colors that we can't see. They have these things in their eyes called cone cells that collect color. And we have those in our eyes too. We got about 250,000 of these cone cells per square millimeter that allow us to see the reds and blues and greens that we see every day. But in a bird of prey like Shakar or Shakoba, they don't have 250,000 cone cells per square millimeter. They have well over 1 million. And
Wow.
so they can see colors that we can't. And
Wow.
in fact, if we could see the world through their eyes, it would probably freak you out because you'd be seeing things you'd never seen before. We we've done experiments with Shakar in years past that, we knew that Shakar could see into the ultraviolet, but we wanted to test this. So what we did is we got these little blocks. They were about maybe 3 inches long and about an inch wide, and we painted them all white, with the exception of one. The one that we painted differently was white, but it was an ultraviolet white. We couldn't tell the difference. They all looked the same. And that ultraviolet white block, we hollowed it out in the middle and we put some food in there. And then we showed Shakar the block with the food in it, with amongst all the other blocks. And then we had a trainer take Shakar out of the room. And then we put that block down with the food upside down so that he couldn't see it. And we moved all the blocks around, brought him in. I couldn't even tell what block it was. And guess what block Shakar goes to? The ultraviolet block.
Wow.
So they can see
Wow.
things that we just can't see. And they have two focal points in their eyes where we only have one. So they can see just like you and I can, but then they can see long, long distances that just like looking through a pair of binoculars, and they can focus on both of those at the same time. So
Wow.
that's pretty hard to imagine, but it's pretty incredible too.
Well, and they kind of need that for being able to hunt, right?
Yeah, they do. Well, the interesting thing about the ultraviolet color is that rodent fur and rodent urine show up in the ultraviolet range. So they can be way the heck up there and they can see a target rich environment before they even see any mice.
Wow.
So it's pretty amazing how nature works. So these are some of the things we try to bring into the classroom, and on the corporate level as well. We talk about the tenacity of these animals and being able to weather the physical storms type of thing in much the same way as we're expected to weather mental storms as human beings. But we can take lessons from nature, and it's inspirational in a lot of ways. We gave a talk to Canada Life, was London Life at one point, and we talked about the Larry story, which is a Canada goose that had been imprinted by people, and his struggle to get back into the wild again. And they ended up declaring the year of Larry because it was such inspiration to them as to the struggles that Larry had to go through in order to return to the wild. And so, yeah, the motivation, I guess, is part of it on the corporate level, but just being part of nature and being inspired by its awesome things that they're able to do. Gripping strength on a little bird like shikar. Oh my goodness, we had a we have this little machine that measures gripping strength, and the strongest grip that we have measured was from a Hamilton steelworker at 137 pounds per square inch gripping strength. That's pretty good. But a little bird like shikar, maybe about, I don't know, a foot high, he can do 200 pounds per square inch gripping strength at the tip of those talons.
Wow.
So, all the way around, the animals are pretty remarkable. Yeah.
Wow.
And these are
Wow.
things we don't see and we don't know
Yeah.
because you just see them flying around up there. Well, what do you know about anything else other than that they have wings? But this is what we try to bring into the classroom.
I'm speaking with Brian Salt, the founder and director of Salthaven Wildlife Rehabilitation and Education Center. And Brian, again, I'm looking at the website, and I think I'm counting seven different kinds of presentations that you offer. So maybe we can very quickly go through them. And the first one is called Species at Risk. So what's that one all about?
Yeah, we look at species that we take for granted every day. We have 8 species of bats in Ontario, and 7 of them are endangered, listed as endangered. Bats are so important in the environment. Oh my gosh, they save farmers literally billions of dollars every year in Canada and the United States. But some of them are now their numbers have depleted. White nose syndrome certainly took a real toll there. But things like pesticides, insecticides are killing bugs, so the food isn't there for them, and the bugs that the bats do get have ingested these pesticides, and it's killing the bats as well. It's like that ripple effect that you were talking about, Kathy, earlier on. You can't take something out of the environment without it having a ripple effect on something else. And we need to be really careful as humans as to how we interact with the environment. That's why this is so important and why the education programs are so important, because it empowers students and teachers and us, generally speaking, as human population, to be able to interact better with the environment. And as we do, then it comes back to help us as well. We breathe the same air, we drink the same water. When we're helping wildlife, we're really just helping ourselves as well. So, you know, communities are strengthened both on the wildlife side and on the human side as well. And those environmental issues are just so important. So, endangered species, yeah, we talk about turtles, snapping turtles. What good are they in the environment? Well, they're kind of the maintenance crew in streams and rivers, and they keep those streams clean by eating dead carcasses of animals that have died. And yeah, it's sad the way we see a lot of the things happening. I know that back a while ago, snapping turtles were considered an endangered species here in Ontario, but they were still allowed to be hunted, and
Mm.
I that's just boggles the mind. Scott Gillingwater, he works under our license, and he put forth a petition to have that reviewed, and the ministry reviewed it and revoked those hunting licenses for snapping turtles. Snapping turtles takes them about 20 to 25 years to be sexually mature. So you take snapping turtles out of the environment, and it's going to take a long, long time for that population to regenerate itself. Same thing happened in the United States. This bird called a little red knot. It has the longest migration period of any animal on the planet. It flies from the tip of Tierra del Fuego all the way up to Nunavut, where its breeding
Mm.
grounds are. When it gets to
Wow.
the tip of Brazil, it flies almost 4,000 miles to the Delaware Basin. And when it gets to the Delaware Basin, it's lost 40% of its body weight. That would kill a human. And it
Yeah.
has to eat. And what it eats is these little eggs that are buried in the sand by horseshoe crabs. And but the lobster industry got the idea that these horseshoe crabs would make great lobster bait because they cut them up and the pieces still move around. The horseshoe crabs are kind of weird to begin with. They have blue blood, and but anyway, it became quite lucrative to back your pickup truck to the beach and load up all these horseshoe crabs at $2 a piece and make $4,000 in an afternoon. Well, it only took one season of doing that before the horseshoe crab population was so depleted that the next season, when the little red knots arrived in the Delaware Basin, they needed food. There was no food to have. It was estimated that their numbers were about 14 million before this happened. And the year after, 2 years after, they did a census up in Nunavut, and there was less than 14,000.
Wow.
A tropical storm can wipe that out just like that. So the DNR very responsibly put a moratorium on collecting horseshoe crabs. But those little red knots, and that was almost 10 years ago, they're still fighting to make a comeback. So again, we have to be careful what we take out of the environment because that ripple effect is really going to make a difference. And it's just like you and I seeing something that doesn't belong on the ground, a piece of cellophane or a piece of string or whatever, and you think, well, that's not going to do a lot of damage. But based on our experience, I would suggest that just about everything you pick up that doesn't belong on the ground and put it in the trash is probably going to save a wildlife, even though you may never see that wildlife that you're saving. It's a responsible thing to do.
And just for our listeners, you mentioned Scott Gillingwater, so he's with the Upper Thames Region Conservation Authority, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Yeah. Does a lot of work with turtles, and we're working on having him come and join us as a guest for a future episode. So turtle fans out there, stay tuned for that. Another one of the different presentations that you give, I've got the list of them here, and one is about human encounters with wildlife. So talk about that one a little bit.
Yeah, we talk about the intelligence of wildlife on a number of different levels, and we have so many stories that are endearing to young and old. We see the anthropomorphic side of wildlife at Salthaven a lot of the times. We see that softer side of wildlife, and it's very touching. Some of the animals that we see coming in are on death's door, and it's very gratifying to be able to get them back on their feet again. It's especially gratifying when you're releasing them and knowing that your hands are probably the last hands that will ever touch these animals, and you had a part in getting them back to where they were healthy and able to survive in the wild once again. So, those are the type of things. We have stories about how intelligent these animals are, the various things that they do that just make you sit back and take notice and think, oh my goodness, like that's almost human. But we have to be careful when I say that, almost human, because that anthropomorphic, in other words, putting human qualities to those animals, oftentimes will lead to a very diminutive life for those animals when they're released back in the wild. We have to be really careful at Salthaven that we don't take that wild nature away from them in the process of getting them better again. Otherwise, when they're released, they don't have the natural fear of humans that they should have.
Right.
And that can get them into a heap of trouble. So we work as best we can in helping to keep hands off. For years and years, I didn't even allow volunteers to put names to the animals. We gave them a number. That's changed now. But yeah, because I think that we can get too close
Yeah.
emotionally to them,
Yeah.
and then we start keeping them longer than they have to be, or it's and that's the other thing too. The longer you keep an animal, a wild animal, in recovery, the less likelihood he's going to make it out into the wild, because something else is going to go wrong, and stress plays a big part of it too. So trying to keep the stress off these animals is really important. My objective as director here is to make sure that the minute those animals start showing some recovery, we start monitoring them for a day release. We look for a weather window. We're watching to making sure they're still making progress up to that weather window. And then the releases are absolutely wonderful, because they're going to be okay after you release them. Yeah, so that's the miracle of flight is another one that we have, and we talk about simple things like feathers. It's amazing when you start looking at feathers under a microscope as to just how intricate and how well formed they really are. It's absolutely incredible. Owls fly perfectly silently, and when you look at their feathers under an electron microscope, those feathers, whereas a bald eagle is very smooth, the feathers are. With an owl, the feathers look like a wheat field that has been blown down in the wind. And so the sound gets trapped in those feathers. And that's one of the reasons why they can fly so silently. And they have other adaptations too, little forks, things at the leading edge of their feathers, on the leading, on the flight feathers. So that these are all things that to help them fly silently. And the reason why they fly silently is so that they can hear their prey on the ground. And they can dive into 6 inches of fresh snow in exactly the spot and bring up a mouse for dinner. And they didn't see that mouse under the snow. They heard it. And their hearing is different too. They have one ear that points up and out, and the other one that points down and out. It's asymmetrical hearing. So their stereo spectrum is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
If we could hear like an owl, we'd probably never take the headphones off listening to music, because it would take on a whole new world. So yeah, it's absolutely incredible.
You mentioned that you go into schools and talk to classes, and you talked about doing the corporate visits with Canada Life. What other kind of groups are you open to speaking to, or have you spoken to in the past?
Just about anybody and everybody. We've been in retirement homes, community groups, Cubs, Scouts, Guides. Um, we've spoken on a corporate level. Yeah, just we're open to sharing our experiences with just about anybody and everybody who is really interested in knowing more about nature and the environment.
So is the best way, if someone is interested in a presentation, is first to go to the website and see if they're one of the options that are presented appeals to them, or if they have a totally different idea that they would like you to talk about, can they ask you to do that? Are you able to talk and tailor a presentation, I guess?
Yeah, we're good at that. We can tailor a presentation to anything that they want, and different groups they make requests as to some of them say your choice, whatever you want to talk about. But there are a lot that say we would like you to address specifically this topic, and yeah, we'll based on our experiences we can address that. We want our audiences to come away with feeling empowered, that they can go out and make a difference in the environment in their very own backyard. All they have to do, Kathy, is go to our website and education tab, and then they'll get in touch with our presentations coordinator, Tammy Hogan, and Tammy will send them out all the information they need to know in preparation for our arrival, and we do all the rest. No fuss, no muss there. They can just as soon as we get there, we're ready to set up and be ready in about 20 minutes. And most of the time, we just need a quiet area for our wildlife ambassadors, and that's about it. We do all the work, and the students get the real meat and potatoes there.
And for our listeners, the Salthaven website is salthaven.org if you're interested. And like Brian said, to head to the education tab. And Brian, you've been doing in-person presentations for many, many years. And then when COVID came around, you had to pivot and do them virtually, but that's actually turned into a beneficial a benefit for Salthaven, because you're now able to do them virtually and reach a wider audience.
Yeah, that was COVID. In some respects, was a real blessing that way. We when everything shut down there with COVID, we thought, oh boy, like there's our education program going right down the tube there. But we what we did was we erected a tower. We built a recording booth at Salthaven, and that's what I'm speaking to you from today, as a matter of fact. And we got a grant from the Trillium Foundation, and they supported the idea. And so we're able to, now we can expand. We can give talks way the heck out in Regina, Saskatchewan, if we wanted to. And sometimes we do that. So it has been a blessing in some ways that has given us a bit of a boost into the future.
Do you have a favorite memory of someone you met at an in-person event and their reaction to the particular wildlife ambassador who you had with you?
I always flash back to, sometimes little kids are just, they're cute and they're funny at the same time, and it astounds me sometimes the knowledge that they already have. But I remember this one time I had Shakar, which is a little lager falcon, and he's very, very fast. He loves to fly free. Every day he will fly free, weather permitting. And back years ago, we clocked him at 109 kilometers an hour on the straight and level, which is pretty darn fast.
Yeah.
And he flies to the lure. And so this one time, and we've never been able to clock him in a dive, but from the things we've read, his species is capable of diving at 250 kilometers an hour. That's really, really fast.
Wow.
And I said to this little girl, she was about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old, sitting at the front of the gymnasium floor, and I just kind of said to her, "That's probably faster than your mom can drive." And she looked at me and went, just not, didn't really have a sense for speed, I guess. But yeah, I had to chuckle at that.
Yeah. Yeah. Kids say the darndest things, right? Yeah. Thanks so much, Brian. And we'll definitely have you back on a future episode, I am sure.
Wonderful, Kathy. Thank you.
So thank you for tuning in and for helping to make Wild About Wildlife a success. For more information about Salthaven presentations, visit our website, salthaven.org. Or if you have any questions about anything you've heard, you can always email me at wildaboutwildlife@salthaven.org. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do. That way you will never miss a future episode. And next month, I sit down with birding experts to talk about things that we can do in our own backyards to help our feathered friends survive the Canadian winter. See you then.